Hello everyone, I'm Lynn Doyle. Thank you for joining us for Meet the Doctors, where each week we'll be looking at important health news and medical breakthroughs and how they may impact you and your family. We won't take these latest studies on face value. We'll explore the facts so that you can make educated decisions, empowering you to take charge of your own health and well-being. We hope that at the end of this hour, our panel of doctors will leave you a little bit better informed. But please understand the medical advice given on this show is not intended for anyone individually. In fact, you should always check with your doctor first before making any medical decisions. Also on our show today, we have a very special guest for you, Dr. Mehmet Oz. Yes, that popular TV Dr. Oz will give us his take on how we baby boomers could shed some excess pounds permanently. And then later in the show, our panel of doctors will also be answering some of your email questions. Now for the latest in health news. Senator Charles Schumer of New York is asking the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to warn medical professionals around the country to be on the lookout for cases of chick-V virus. It's being brought into the U.S. by returning World Cup soccer fans. You see, Brazil has been known to be the home of mosquitoes that are known to spread this virus. It causes fever, muscle pains, headaches, joint swelling, and rashes. But the good news is it's rarely fatal. So far, the scorecard of cases is 3 in New York and 25 in Florida, but we are expected to see a rise in those cases when those soccer fans start to return from the World Cup. Here's another piece of interesting news. An arthritis drug, tufactinib citrate, has shown unexpected side effects. You see, a man who was left completely bald from psoriasis and a condition called alopecia is now sporting a full head of hair, eyebrows, and eyelashes after being treated with the drug by doctors at Yale University. 6.5 million people, most of them men, suffer from alopecia, so this could make a real difference for a great many people. But you know what? Kids suffer from it too, so it could really help them. We should point out that experts say it will take a lot more time and testing to find out how safe and effective this drug is before it becomes more widely available. We also have some major research conducted by MIT and Harvard scientists that have identified mutations in a single gene that could possibly impact heart disease in this country. Nick Tate is here to join us to talk about this. He is our Newsmax Deputy Health Editor. He's joining us from our Boynton Beach, Florida studio. Nick, it's good to have you with us.
Good to be with you, Lynn.
These statistics about heart disease in America are staggering. 1 million Americans suffer from some sort of heart disease. What can you tell us about that? Why are we so prevalent for it?
Well, some of it's lifestyle, some of it's what we eat, some of it's the lack of activity. We don't get enough exercise. But as these researchers found, some of it is a genetic predisposition that many people have to be prone to heart disease and heart attack.
I've also learned that women suffer from heart disease, and it does not get as much attention as, let's say, breast cancer. Why do you think that is?
That's absolutely true. I mean, there has been a very aggressive and successful campaign to raise awareness for breast cancer. And while women certainly need to be doing what they can to guard against breast cancer, be aware early, to get treatment early if they are at risk, heart disease has been kind of the Rodney Dangerfield when it comes to diseases that face women. It really does not get the respect it deserves. In fact, by some estimates, 5 times as many women die from heart disease as breast cancer. So getting the word out on protecting themselves, women protecting themselves, is really very important. Part of the problem is that women experience heart disease and heart attacks in different ways than men. They may not have that crushing pain that men typically get with a heart attack. It may be more indigestion or a dull pain, and as a result, they may dismiss their own symptoms, and the truth is that many doctors have dismissed their symptoms as insignificant. But we're starting to see that change. More women are becoming aware, more cardiologists are becoming aware, and the tide is starting to turn on that.
So how will these studies help doctors and patients alike in the fight against heart disease?
Research in particular really found that people who have a particular gene defect have lower levels of triglycerides in their blood. Now, triglycerides are a very dangerous form of fat, and what they found is that those folks with lower levels of triglyceride are at much lower risk for heart disease and heart attack. So it's not cholesterol. it's triglycerides that may be the key factor here. So in some ways, we may have been fighting the wrong enemy in the war on heart disease all along, and now the attention is likely to refocus on driving down those levels of triglycerides. The good news here is that you don't need a pill, you don't need a drug to do that. You can do it by eating a healthy diet that has high levels of vegetables, high levels of whole grains, and a lower level of sugary processed foods. So, the new research on genetics and the research that shows that there are differences between men and women really are driving more tailored and will drive more tailored treatments for heart disease that I think will help a lot more people.
If you have heart disease or heart attacks in your family history, should you be particularly careful about following the directions that you just provided for us?
Absolutely true. I mean, what we hear from health specialists is that genetics are not destiny, but genetics, I've heard the phrase, genetics load the gun and lifestyle pulls the trigger. So that if you have a family background of heart disease or cancer or diabetes, you need to be careful to moderate what you're doing with your lifestyle to lower that genetic predisposition you have to that disease. So you need to be making sure that you're taking care of yourself, eating well, getting enough exercise, going for those recommended screenings, meeting regularly with a doctor whenever you have any kind of suspicious symptom, heart pain, chest pain, a suspicious lump, or anything that might indicate that you're at risk. So it's vigilance, it's making sure that you're monitoring and changing those things that you can and have control over, which is your lifestyle, your diet, your exercise, but really recognizing that if you are at an increased risk, you need to be very vigilant in taking better care of yourself than you otherwise might.
Oh, great advice. Of course, Nick, we always appreciate what you provide for us, and we want to follow those studies. I'm sure that the medical news will continue to follow that, and we'll update it as we get more information on it. Good to have you with us, Nick.
Good to be with you. Thank you, Lynn.
Sure thing. Next up, our feature takeaway. We baby boomers are always being told that fat is bad and a low-carb, low-calorie diet is good, but some startling new studies now reveal that you can have your steak and eat it too. We're going to talk about that and much more, including our conversation with Dr. Oz when Meet the Doctors continues. Please stay with us. Welcome back to Meet the Doctors. So is fat our friend or foe? Well, in just a moment, Dr. Richard Stein, a cardiologist at NYU Langone Medical Center, will give us his takeaway on that. But first, let's return to our Florida studios where our deputy health editor, Nick Tate, is standing by. So Nick, tell me, could fat actually be good for us?
Well, actually, there are certain fats that are good for you. We've been told, most of us have been told all our lives that we should be eating no fat or low fat, that the best way to avoid being fat is to just avoid eating fat. But it's really not so simple. The latest research shows that, in fact, there are some fats that are good for you. Now, we're not talking about the fats that are in donuts and fried foods, but we're talking about fats that are in things like the Mediterranean diet, olive oils, fish, certain cuts of beef, nuts. And knowing the difference between the good fats and the bad fats is really the key.
All right, so to get some insight on knowing the difference between the good fat and bad fat, we're going to invite our guest to join us. He's a cardiologist from NYU Langone Medical Center, Dr. Richard Stein. It's nice to have you with us.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
So do people realize that there is a good fat versus a bad fat? I thought they were all bad fats.
So clearly, fats like in fish oil and in vegetable fats and nuts are fats that are not thought to promote atherosclerosis or heart disease. In fact, they are felt to be protective in some regard. Fats that are saturated fats and animal fats and whole milk were traditionally thought to be a bad fat. Really, I think we're beginning to understand that that area between good fats and bad fats is becoming very blurred.
So
and small amounts of appropriate fats from milk, small amounts of appropriate fats from meat and from fowl are absolutely part of a heart-healthy diet.
So how do health consumers differentiate? What should they look for, let's say, on labels or on the side of the milk carton when it comes to fat content?
So I think what we've learned from the last 15 years, where we've taken fat out of many of the foods and provided fat-free versions of it, skim milk, yogurts, and things like that, that actually what we've done is by taking fat out of diets, we've actually increased calories, and America has gotten very fat on a low-fat diet.
Really?
And the incidence of heart disease has not gone down, and the precursors of heart disease like diabetes and high blood pressure have actually gone up. So I think now what is going to replace the good fat, bad fats concept has been not what you don't eat, but what you do eat. Okay, and what you should be eating is a lot of fruits and vegetables, a lot of nuts, more whole grain than processed grain. Chewing a toasted piece of white bread will get more sugar into your bloodstream quicker than will actually supping a teaspoon of sugar.
Let's talk about sugar and salt, because I understand that fat-free foods actually have a higher content of those two ingredients than perhaps just regular food.
So if you take fat out, then you need to put something in. So the only two things, the diet is really consisted of carbohydrates, which are sugars, fats, and proteins. All right? And then we have some things that you eat but don't digest, like fibers. Okay? And largely the problem has been is that when we've taken fat out of the diet, we've added materials that are starches or sugars that go into the diet. So we've stimulated the development of diabetes, perhaps at an earlier age. We've increased calorie consumption. Americans now, as opposed to 10 years ago, are consuming about 500 more calories a day than they were before, and they're not doing 500 calories worth of exercise to take it off each day. So we're becoming a fat country, and we're going to be seeing tremendous amounts of these diseases. There's a fear, in all honesty, among physicians who deal with preventive cardiology like I do, that this next generation of children may not live as heart attack free and as long as did their parents.
Boy, that is disturbing.
Yes.
That is disturbing. But we're so health conscious in this country. We're always trying the new fad, the latest diet. Are they good for us, even if they have immediate results?
Right. So most of them are not particularly good for us. I think, and it's hard to bunch them all into one category, but selecting a particular food, some herb from South America, something from the Hawaiian off island, some chocolate off the coast of South America.
Eliminating all carbs or all fat, eliminating anything.
You know, are really silly diets, okay? They're marketed, I'm being benign when I say the people who are marketing them basically believe in them, as opposed to are just interested in fame and money. But I think what Americans should eat is a diet that people who tend to live on the ocean and the Mediterranean areas, where they have fewer heart attacks than we do. And in a very non-fancy way, they're eating a lot more vegetables, a lot more fruits, a lot more fish. And it's why, for instance, in France, where they have a fair amount of animal fat in their diet, they smoke much more than we do. And they have lower incidences of heart attack because they're eating much more fruits and vegetables. So it really is a little bit more of what you eat. And you should eat as many natural foods as possible.
One thing that we need to talk about, because we hear about it all the time, is our triglycerides.
Right.
Now, is this like the cholesterol where you can have high numbers and low numbers and they mean different things?
So the triglycerides are really simple, okay? You eat foods that contain fats. The fats are broken down into small fatty acids, and then they must travel around the body. They must go to the muscles where they're used to burn energy and make you be able to run and climb and do things like that. And they're also stored in fat cells, which are what make us fat when we store too many things in fat cells. And there is no question in my mind that fats are essential and important, but too much of them obviously is a big problem. Now, the triglyceride, okay? One little 3-carbon molecule called glycerol has 3 attachments on it, and that's the tri. And to each of those attachments, we attach a fatty acid, and that's what a triglyceride is. 3 fatty acids and 1 glycerol molecule, and that's how the body moves all that fat around your body to where it it can be stored or where it can be used.
So it sounds like we just need to be aware of what we're putting in our mouth. But a
Yes.
steak every once in a while is not going to kill us. Dr.
Absolutely
Richard
not.
Stein, thank you so much for the great advice. We're going to take a short break, but when we come back, summer is finally here, and with it comes the risk of skin cancer. We're going to find out about that and the danger that it presents to you if you're overexposed to the sun. So please stay with us. We're also going to talk to Dr. Oz. We'll be right back. It's finally summer, and that means days at the beach and barbecues and all types of outdoor sports under the sun. But beware, the resulting tan could be deadly. Newsmax Deputy Health Editor Nick Tate's joining us once again. Hey, Nick, would it be fair to say that there's a skin cancer epidemic in the U.S. today?
Well, that's right, Lynn. Skin cancer has reached epidemic proportions in the U.S. Let me throw a couple numbers at you. Nearly 3.5 million Americans are treated for skin cancer every year, which makes it the most common form of cancer in the U.S. More than 70,000 of those cases are melanoma, the deadly, life-threatening form of cancer, and we're seeing more today than we ever have before. In fact, 5 times as many people are diagnosed today with skin cancer as in the 1970s. Now, why? What's behind the rise? Well, we really can point the finger at the growth and the popularity of indoor tanning salons. A lot of people think that if you get a tan on a tanning bed, it's safer than the midday sun. But in fact, tanning beds produce nearly 15 times as much UV radiation, which is linked to skin cancer, as the sun. The other reason is we've become a much more mobile society. It's so much easier today than ever before to just get on a plane and take a cheap flight to a sunny destination or take an economy-priced cruise. So more Americans are in the sun more often, even in winter months, than ever before. A generation ago, we'd stay home. We'd be indoors in the winter. But now we can go to the islands, we can go to the Caribbean, and we're exposing ourselves to more sun, more UV radiation, and of course putting ourselves at greater risk for skin cancer.
So is there any such thing as a so-called safe tan?
Well, unfortunately, there really is no such thing as a safe tan. And in fact, a suntan is really a sign of DNA damage to the skin. Skin cells, when they're exposed to UV light, produce more pigment. So that's what you're seeing with a suntan. It's skin damage, it's DNA damage. And you know, sunburn and skin cancer are not the only problems with UV radiation. UV light can damage your eyes, it can cause cataracts, it can cause vision loss, age spots, wrinkling, and it can change the texture of your skin. So it's not just skin cancer we need to worry about. And I think the big problem is that we still see a tan as a sign of beauty, particularly in this country, when in fact what we really need to be considering it as is a precancerous condition.
All right, thanks, Nick. To tell us more about how to avoid skin cancer is board-certified dermatologist Kenneth Beer. He's on the faculty of the University of Miami and has been published in over 50 medical journals. Dr. Beer, it's good to have you with us.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.
So before we talk about skincare, I understand that you're featured in New Beauty magazine.
I am. New Beauty magazine, just for this month in July, had a feature where they allowed me to make over a 36-year-old woman using injections of different products, and they allowed me to do her nose, her chin, her cheeks, and show from the beginning to the end, and it'll be out in this month's publication.
Well, congratulations. We certainly look forward to reading about that. Now, we know that staying in the sun for too long is not good for us. Can you take us through what actually causes the skin cancer and why it's not good for us?
Sure. On a microscopic level, what happens is the cells become disorganized, and when they become disorganized, some grow faster than others. And the cancer is really the growth of skin cells without any boundaries or any checks and balances. The sun is thought to induce damage to the DNA that Nick was referring to, and after that damage is too much, the cells just start to grow without any control. And then you get these little skin cancers, and we see them primarily in areas that have a lot of accumulated sun damage.
Now, not everyone who has a tan or who has been in the sun their whole life gets skin cancer. So why is it that some people are more prone to it and others can be outside tan their whole lives and never run the risk?
It's a great question. There's a lot of information written by an anthropologist named Nina Jablonski, who wrote a whole book about pigment, and I highly recommend it. But some people are more adapted to environments where they're sun exposed and their rates of skin cancer is really, really low. Other people whose ancestors came from Scotland, Ireland, Germany, Norway, really don't have enough pigment to defend themselves. And some of that has to do with needs for vitamin D and tolerances, but it's basically the genetics of your skin and pigment.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned the vitamin D, because I've always heard that being outside and getting fresh air and sunshine would be good for us. So is it like everything else that we've talked about today? It's good in moderation, but not excess?
That's exactly right. Moderation is the key. So get moderate sun exposure when you're 21 and older. Try and be really careful when you're 21 and younger. But it's unrealistic to tell people to live in a hut and never go outside. We all are outside. We all have lives. So use sun protection, and moderation is really the key. Try and avoid sunburns. Try and avoid instances where you'll get very high sun exposures, like Nick was saying, going on a cruise in the middle of the winter, and your skin just doesn't have the defenses to help itself.
So what if we actually have already done the damage? Is there anything on the horizon that might be able to reverse either skin cancer itself or some of the damage to the epidermis that's occurred?
Well, there are things available now. We use antioxidants like vitamin C and compounds like retinol and tretinoin, also known as retin A. And if you look at the biopsies of skin treated with them, you'll see an incredible improvement. So we think that we're helping the organization, decreasing skin cancer. We also use lasers and light sources and different types of medication, so we can really get rid of 5 or 10 years of sun damage pretty easily at this point. And I think in the future we'll be even better at it.
Well, you have to admit, people always look better when they have a tan. So is there a way that we can get that glow, that healthy look, without being out in the sun nonstop? Do you recommend either the spray tans or the lotions that they now sell like over the counter?
I think that either of those solutions is better than going outside and getting, really dark. So spray tans, as long as you don't breathe them and they're done correctly, are fine. I think that the topical tans are really pretty good. I've seen some really nice ones, so I don't have a problem with either of those.
Okay, well, this coming from a man who lives in the Sunshine State. We certainly appreciate all of the advice that you gave us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We look forward to having you again here on Meet the Doctors. For years, television audiences have absolutely loved Dr. Oz. In fact, they consider him a member of their families. Well, a member of our family, our own Newsmax contributor, Dr. Erica Schwartz, recently spoke to him by Skype about obesity, weight loss, and on a more personal note, just why it is that he became a doctor.
You're serious about this, though.
I'm serious.
You want to get rid of your carb cravings.
Yeah.
You'll help me with all this. Here it goes.
First of all, you are touching everyone in America. Why did you become a doctor to begin with?
Well, being a television host was never part of my game plan in life. My calling in life be a physician, as it was for you, I suspect. So when my dad's a doctor, when I was going through college, I loved everything about medicine. I applied to medical school and was lucky enough to be educated by some of the best doctors I'd ever met in my life. They taught me about compassion and healing, but also the high-tech sides of the field, like heart surgery, which is what I practice now. That's what I was doing this morning before I got the call with you. And one of the best parts about medicine is you get to look at people in the eyes every single day and and have an authentic, intimate relationship with them where you're actually connected and you're making something magical happen. And we try to take that and put it in a bottle and put it on the show, which is at the end why we do the television program.
You are a celebrity. You touch millions of people every single day. How come you're still operating?
For me, it's a calling. As I mentioned earlier, you don't walk into medicine just because it's there. You walk into it because you have a deep-seated passion to be involved with the well-being of folks. I remember as a kid seeing my dad walk into a patient's room, taking needles, sticking it in his trachea, right where the voice box is. Because back then, in order to get the patients to cough, that's what they would do. And the patient smiled when he left and thanked him. I thought, my goodness, my dad just did something that was really invasive that most of the time you would not be thanking someone for doing to you, and yet he was being thanked. And I recognized that what people desired wasn't just good news. That's sort of good, nice to have when you have it. What they really want is hope. And as a physician, you get to give people hope, which is, again, not just giving them good news, but more importantly, having them make sense of whatever news you gave them. And if you can do that, then the magic happens. And the television show is just an opportunity to do that with a lot more people paying attention.
What do you think is the most important health issue in America today?
It's obesity, without question. And for anybody who's interested in healthcare budget and health policy, forget about being a Democrat or Republican. Neither program will work if you don't deal with obesity in America. And if you deal with obesity, every program will work. So if you think about it, the weight gain that we've had in this country has been ponderously large over the last generation and a half. And most importantly, it's probably about a third, maybe 40% of the healthcare budget. So it's a big expense that we pay. It's a hefty penalty we have to lift for being overweight. And that expense never comes back to us. That's wasted money. Because even when you spend money to help people who are overweight, guess what? They still get sick. And they die from things that you never would have expected. Cancer, for example, which we thought people with weight problems died of heart attacks. They die of a lot of other things, immune problems. They're always getting sick. They can't sleep at night. So they gain more weight. I mean, there are all these unfortunate realities to a society that has made it easy for people to put weight on. The elegance, of course, and I talk about this in the show whenever I can, is that when you automate your life to make the right decisions easy, then all of a sudden you begin losing weight. That's why people who are heavy think that people that are thin are just lucky. They're not. It's actually that they've, for whatever reason, in their lives adopted techniques that work effortlessly. A lot of times you're passed on by their parents or their relatives. But if folks who are overweight learn those tricks most of the time, not always, but most of the time, relatively effortlessly, they'll go back to their playing weight. That's the weight they were when they're 18 to 20 years of age.
I was seeing patients today too. And this woman came in and she was having soda for breakfast at 9 o'clock this morning. And you know what? That woman was a doctor. How do you tell those people that what they're doing is actually harming themselves? How do you do it?
Well, the worst thing to do is finger wag. That doesn't work. What you got to do is look them in the eyes and say, listen, I care about you. And people around you care about you. And all you got to do is care about yourself as much as they do. So it's much more about reminding them about the sacredness of the human body, how special, how magical it is. And they will, on their own, sort of figure out that you don't want to poison something so special. You see a newborn baby, and I just became a grandfather, so I see this firsthand. This life is just coming to existence. It's a complete miracle. And then you begin to abuse it. And the people who abuse it the worst are the people who own those bodies. So say this to yourself. As someone that I really cared about was putting in their mouth, what you're putting in your mouth, what would you say to them? Whatever that phrase is, say it to yourself.
How do you actually get people to remember that they're responsible for their own health?
It's not an onerous task to take care of your body. Quite the opposite. It's a celebration that we're offering you. And I think a lot of times in medicine, we haven't given the messages to folks. That's the real reason, Erica, that America hasn't gotten the message. We haven't given it to them the right way. They need to see it in ways that resonate with them. And if they do, then what ends up happening is they say, my goodness, this is so cool. I wish I knew this earlier. And then they embrace it. The biggest movement towards health in America was the physical fitness movement. Why? Because we weren't taking things from you. We were giving you things. And that same is true in every other thing we talk about. Instead of taking away the foods you can eat, give people the foods they can eat. Eat as many of these things as you want. You won't gain weight. And guess what? They'll eat those foods. And they'll start to find foods they love that happen to be good for them. That's how you end up, for example, losing weight. Sleep is another great example. Instead of giving people homework assignments with sleep, teach them a couple simple tips about sleep hygiene. And by the way, of course, we give all these great details to folks as much as we can in different places that we speak to them. But they have to take the messages and translate them into actions. And ultimately, in most families, there's one caregiver, one person who's responsible for taking the message and spreading it. And if we don't give them the ammo to convey that message the right way, it's called nagging. So you want to give them the right message with the right impact, the right words, and that way you get change, meaningful change.
And I can't thank you enough for really sharing with us and being a supporter of our show. And I can't thank you enough for everything you're doing for America and for our health. To you.
Thank you, Erica. Good luck with
Thank you,
your book.
Mehmet. Thank you,
Right.
Mehmet. That was the one and only Dr. Mehmet Oz. Coming up next, we will be answering your health questions right here on Meet the Doctors on Newsmax TV.
Well, now it's time for our panel of doctors to help answer your email questions from our health section on Newsmax.com. Dr. Erica Schwartz is an expert in the field of wellness and disease prevention. She's also a Newsmax contributor. Dr. Joseph Raphael has also joined us. He's an internist by training, but he now practices in the field of age management. And Dr. Richard Stein, who we spoke with earlier, as you remember, is a cardiologist at NYU Langone Medical Center here in Manhattan. So it's good to have you guys here. You ready to give some great advice to our viewers?
Absolutely. It's great to be here.
Okay, let's see. Here's our question. This one, I think maybe Dr. Raphael, you could answer for us. It says, my doctor says I have low testosterone and suggests that I take an injection. I'm 60 years old and I've not been feeling quite myself lately, if you know what I mean, wink, wink. In fact, my wife said that testosterone can increase prostate cancer risk and cause heart problems, even if it might help in the other area of life. What do you suggest?
Well, the first thing I would say to your questioner is the low testosterone at a certain level that is treatable? Presumably he's gotten a blood test and particularly looked at the free testosterone to see if it is low enough. There are other things that can cause fatigue, but usually testosterone deficiency is the one that causes that other thing that kind of, we all know what he's talking about. So let's assume that the physician has cleared him of other causes of fatigue, because you want to make sure you do that. And then he does in fact have low testosterone, and that's causing his symptoms. To speak to the question about whether or not it increases the risk of prostate cancer, I would say there isn't evidence for that. We used to think that that was the case, but now we know that actually men with low testosterone can have an increased risk of prostate cancer, the other way around. Testosterone can also help improve libido, which is the sex drive he's talking about. It can help with fatigue and depression, many other things. So I would consider it if an appropriate blood test was done.
And of course, we always suggest that our viewers check with their doctors, but at least they should open a dialogue about the different options that are available for this gentleman.
Of course.
Okay, let's go back to our questions. This one, I think, for Dr. Schwartz. What's the best treatment for migraines? I get them only a couple of times a year, so I don't want to go on regular medication. Is there anything I can do when I feel one coming on to so-called head it off?
Well, it depends what's causing it. So, as we know, migraines can be caused by hormones. And as we know,
Those
women,
daggone
isn't that
hormones.
funny? Hormones, right. And if you have, before your period, women get hormone headaches. They get them as they get their periods. They have all kinds of other reasons, like they don't sleep enough. They eat the wrong things, they drink too much alcohol, they don't take good care of themselves, they don't exercise. There are a lot of reasons for migraines. And before you treat the migraines with medication, you want to make sure that the lifestyle is corrected and the hormones are in balance.
So is that a simple conversation that we have with our doctor? Is it a blood test? I mean, I had migraines when I was younger, and I have to say they are devastating.
Right.
And once you find out what causes them and you can get a so-called cure for it, it changes your life completely.
Absolutely. Well, I think the first thing about anything has to be a conversation with your physician. And if you don't have a conversation with your physician, then your physician is not going to be able to help you. And unfortunately, we are so over-specialized, and we do so many things that each one of us is excellent at, only that we forget that the conversation with the patient is the most important piece.
And that's what we're trying to do here on Meet the Doctors, is actually give people the opportunity to hear from you all and then continue the conversation with their doctor. All right, here's another question from our email bag. I take a statin to control my cholesterol, but I have been reading about red rice yeast as a natural alternative to prescription medications. What are the pros and cons of taking the supplement and ditching the prescription? Are the active ingredients the same?
Who are we asking that?
I'm throwing it out there.
So red rice yeast actually is a statin. About 80% of it is the original statin on the market called lovastatin. It is the way actually it's made. The only question is, do you really want to get it where we take a rice and put it in with a natural product that gradually converts the rice into the statin, or do you want to take a pharmacological grade product? Really, it's about the same. I have lots of patients who don't want to take pills. They have an aversion to pharmacological pills, and we can, if they have a mild abnormality in their cholesterol, really get to reasonable goals using it. My problem is it's not a precisely quantified amount. So I'm never sure that when the patient goes back and buys another bottle at an herbal store, that they're getting the same amount that I was giving them before. So it takes a little bit of testing back and forth. It is no big...
Actually, to see what the cholesterol is on the patient, and if the cholesterol's come down, then you have your answer to the question.
Well, you do, but you don't want to give more than is necessary, just really like it is with any other pharmaceutical. The fact that it is a naturally made product doesn't, with a sort of a fungal solution that turns it slightly red, and that's how it gets its name. Yeah, and you know, I don't think anymore it's made in bathtubs in the back of you know, Chinese houses, but nonetheless, it's not quantified in terms of the way it pill is, and I feel more comfortable knowing that the patient is taking the same amount of the drug. If they get muscle pain, if they get other things, I can bring it back down. But I think for people who really don't want to take any other kind of pill, we can get about some of the statin effect. It won't be as good as the superstatins, but it will work.
Do you find that people are looking for alternatives to traditional prescription medicine?
I think they are. In the case of this product, I think that it's sort of, they're afraid to take a medication that's from the pharmaceutical companies, but this is essentially the same thing. And I would say that the effect, if you really work hard on diet and exercise and weight loss, you're going to probably have as good an effect, and you're not really doing it any more safely.
Right.
Okay, back to our questions. Boy, this one I think even I could answer. I've been having pressure in my chest lately, and I feel breathless and pant heavily without doing anything strenuous. What could be the problem? The problem is you can't breathe. Go to the doctor, go to the hospital. And I don't even have my MD.
And you shouldn't be asking.
Okay, but is that just common sense that if you're having trouble with that you should seek medical assistance?
Of course. Common sense is actually the #1 solution to most of our medical problems. And of course, the cardiologist is going to say, go to the emergency room. You can't breathe.
Well, so if it's serious, and if it's acute, and if it's different than it's been before, then really going to the emergency room can save your life, make you live longer. For people who are, but the emergency room has to be a fairly sophisticated hospital that can do urgent angioplasty, where we can actually go into the arteries, open them up, aspirate out the clot, and save a lot of heart muscle. You know, we use the word time is muscle, and the sooner you get to the emergency room, the sooner we can do that, the more of your heart you leave the hospital with than before. So it's an essential thing to do. But this is something that's been going on for a while, and it's no different now than it was yesterday from the story the patient is giving us, and in which case you really could make an appointment and go see a physician for this problem.
I would just say you also have to take into consideration how old the patient is.
Right.
If you're 30 years old and you're a woman, the likelihood that this is a serious cardiac problem is very, very low.
Okay.
If you're a 65-year-old gentleman and has high blood pressure, then you got to watch
So
out.
we've dug a phenomenal hole for ourselves with exactly that statistical concept, and we've missed a fair amount of early heart disease and early heart attacks in women who present with atypical syndromes.
Thank you for being with us, and thank you so much for watching. For Meet the Doctors, I'm Lynn Doyle.